So you've been meditating for years, but you're still not enlightened. Good news, you don't need more sitting. All you need is a simple shift in perspective. I've led hundreds of people through this, and it always makes them wonder how they ever made their practice so complicated. The problem, friend, is effort. Effort got you here, but it won't get you there, in a way of speaking. When you begin a spiritual practice, you're usually trying to get away from some bad habit or collection of bad habits or difficult circumstances, vices, bad relationships. You have some version of life that you're trying to change. And so just being on the cushion, so to speak, just doing meditation instead of doing whatever it was you were doing previously is great. And it very often takes effort to swim against the tide of all of those bad habits, of all of those bad circumstances. Maybe you have friends who are inviting you out to drink. Maybe you have friends who are inviting you out to do other kinds of things. And just to resist that takes great effort. So historically, one of the facets of the spiritual path has always been to clean up one's life. And this takes effort. But you've been meditating for a long while now, and lots of people I speak to in that position experience diminishing returns. They're applying effort just like they always did, but it's no longer leading to the kinds of changes that it was. Even once you've begun to establish a practice, application of effort can still work to begin to make the kinds of inner changes that support awakening, that support enlightenment. But in the end, effort becomes the problem. Because as long as you're applying effort, you're reinforcing the idea that there is a someone here that must be changed, a permanent identity, ego, self, with a history and a future, and qualities and characteristics that must be changed. But this cannot stand up to sincere investigation carried out in your direct experience. Because in your direct experience, which is very much what any spiritual practice is about, in your direct experience, in what is going on right here, right now, that history does not exist. That future does not exist. The story that you tell yourself about yourself cannot exist, because to tell a story, we need a series of subsequent moments. When we take that story to be true, the things that we say about ourselves, as though that is who we really are. For example, I'm someone who's been meditating for years, but I'm still not enlightened. I'm someone who really would rather be going out with my friends and getting drunk, but I'm here doing meditation instead. I have these character flaws that I must scrub away. I behave in these ways that I really feel I shouldn't. And so I'm using meditation to try to make myself different. You see, that took me, 30 seconds to reel off. That's not a single moment. And the more dedicated, the more sincere we become in our practice, the more important this moment right now becomes. The more precise we're able to be in rooting ourselves, in a way of speaking, to what is right now. We don't really have time to even say a single word. Besides, words are made up. All language is made up. And so if you take yourself to be something that you can describe, and then you try to change that thing, your practice will always be based on false premises. And though practicing in a more relativistic way can bring beneficial results, at a certain point it must be let go of. The idea that you are a permanent entity that is a certain way and must be another way has to go. It has to go. There are all kinds of practices that are based on additive means. You're trying to add to yourself virtue. You're trying to add to yourself discipline. You're trying to add to yourself kindness, compassion, wisdom. And this kind of can work in a way. You can cultivate qualities in a psychological way. You can train yourself. This is wholesome. This is beneficial. But if and when you're ready to go deeper into what we call spirituality, but really can't be called anything, in the end is just about being what we truly are, then your process must change from additive to subtractive. It's about seeing more and more what you're not, letting go more and more of what you're not, and ceasing to try to change yourself in any way at all. Because, friend, how can you be at peace if you're trying to change yourself? It can't work. That's not peace. In the monastery that my first Dharma teacher lived in, they made a distinction between what they called the organized method and the natural method. These are methods of practice, methods of realizing truth. The organized method is what you probably think of when you think of a monastery. The bell rings, the monks all go to the meditation hall, they do a specific technique for somehow changing the mind. Then they do whatever comes next. They do chores, they have set meal times, and all of this is part of their Dharma practice. All of this is part of their spiritual practice. But it's structured, it's formal, it's organized. In the natural method, which is typically only practiced by monks who already know their shit, they just do whatever. This is more commonly what monks will practice in seclusion, though some do practice structured methods in seclusion as well. But the contrasting image to the organized method is the monk who is just in his little hut in the forest, being. Just being. And maybe the monk sits for a while. Does he have to call it meditation? No. Does he have to apply a rigid technique? No. One of my favorite quotes from Ram Dass is, do you want to be a meditator or do you want to be free? If you want to be a meditator, if you're in love with the art, then by all means, practice all the techniques you can get your hands on. This is a wonderful thing to do. But if you want to be free, if in other words you want to be okay in all circumstances, content, at peace, then if you have to do a technique to work yourself into that state, that ain't freedom. That's dependency. It's a wholesome dependency. It's a much more healthy dependency than a dependence on alcohol. But it's still a dependency. If you're really interested in freedom, then it is about letting go of absolutely everything. Of course, you don't live in a monastery. And so to do something like an organized method is incredibly difficult for you. You might be able to go on retreat once or twice a year. You might be someone who enjoys structure and finds it easy to implement structure into your life. As such, you might be able to create something like an organized method as a lifestyle for yourself. But if you've made it this far through this video, that's not working for you. Not anymore, at least. So the question becomes, if the organized method, or if in a more general sense, all of your various efforts among various practices haven't worked for you, and if you don't live in a monastery where there's all kinds of support for an organized method of practice, then the natural method is all you have left. Now you might talk about, well, hey, maybe it's a spectrum and not binary. You might enjoy some degree of structure in your practice, but let's just talk about, for a minute, what it might be like to let go of everything, including everything you've ever thought about your practice. All the shoulds, oughts, and musts that show up in both your worldly life and your spiritual life. And let's explore then, what is it about you that is most natural? What is it about you that is not dependent upon anything? Anything. I could leave you in inquiry on this for months, I imagine. If you're feeling brave, if you're feeling committed, if you're feeling dedicated, you could stop this video right now and just sit with that inquiry. What is it about you that is most natural? That is least dependent on anything? This has something of the quality of a Zen koan, a spiritual riddle. But there is an answer. There is an answer in a single word to this question. And that answer is awareness. We've had some imagery of the monastery here, and when I think about a monastery, I often think about breath meditation, that classical and most popular form of meditation. And one of the things that's great about breath meditation is that the breath is always around, it's free, and everybody does it. But it's still more dependent on circumstances than awareness is. What if you become ill? What if you have pneumonia like my dad did a little while back? He needed a machine to breathe for a little while. And of course, if the breathing stops for long enough, we die. But it can be restricted, it can be uncomfortable. What if you're in a place where there's a bad smell? Well, of course, you could practice with all of this, and it would be good practice. But in this question of what is most natural, most essential, most fundamental about experience, awareness is the answer. Awareness is that which knows the breath. Awareness is that which remains between breaths. Awareness remains even if a machine is doing your breathing for you. So it's even more dependable than the breath, which is said to be remarkably dependable in these traditions of classical meditation, and they're right. But who is it that knows the breath? What is it that knows you're meditating? Awareness. That open cognizance that experiences everything. We can hold our breath for sometimes minutes at a time, but we're never not aware. So if you're interested in what is most natural, if you're interested in what is always free, if you're interested in what is already and always enlightened, in that it is beyond harm, never affected by anything, naturally clear, naturally wise, naturally compassionate, naturally peaceful, naturally effective, then what you're interested in is awareness. And this, friend, is what you always have been, what you are, and what you always will be. You can confirm this in your direct experience right now simply by acknowledging that everything else you've ever experienced has come and gone. Awareness is the only way that you knew it came, the only way you knew it was, the only way that you knew its absence. Awareness is in and in between everything, the essence of all experience. So if you wish to know your true nature, this is it. And this may be somewhat disappointing to you. Trungpa Rinpoche said enlightenment is the ego's ultimate disappointment. There's no fanfare. You don't get a halo. No one's going to set off fireworks. But what you do get is that which is ultimately stable, that which knows all as it is, that which is beyond harm, that which is not born and does not die. Recognize this fundamental aspect of your being as often as you remember, just for a brief moment, and watch all of your problems vanish. Indeed, should a problem arise, all you need do is recognize its context, the space in which it appears, and now you've returned to yourself. You've recognized this fundamental nature, free and open and unaffected by whatever arises. This is what is meant in the non-dual teachings when it is said that you are already enlightened. And so I hope you will make this recognition more and more frequently, more and more deeply, until the idea of doing meditation to realize who you already are becomes absurd to you. If you enjoyed this teaching, do all the stuff that tells YouTube that you want to see more of them. If you want to know what it is currently that is blocking this recognition for you, take my 1-minute quiz. There's a link in the description. You will answer 3 questions, after which I'll give you some personalized guidance appropriate to where you're at, what you're dealing with. And then, if appropriate, I'll offer an opportunity for us to connect and have a conversation together about your practice.